I asked the boy beneath the pines. He said the master's gone alone, herb picking somewhere on the mount, cloud hidden, whereabouts unknown. Well, here I am in Druid Heights, California. And no one can find me up here, that's true. Unless, of course, I want to be found. And that only by special invitation. And so, I invite you, yes, you, here tonight, at this time, this liminal moment between sleep and wake, night and day, life and death, reality and illusion. Come, you friendly ghosts and spirits of the future. Come to this autumn night, November 16, 1973. Come to my hidden high-up cabin in the hills and sit with me now till dawn. I can just about make you out. Yes, shapes in the darkness. Giggles at the back there. Bashful at the front. A reaching out into the past. A future memory. That's the way. Let us imagine ourselves into being, into contact, into real life connection, not in some witchily Aleister Crowley way, but just in good faith. And for the fun of it, let us suspend our disbelief in a theatrical act, good evening, of imagination. For as St. Joan reminded us, faith is an act of imagination. I know you're there. I can hear you breathing. There is no fourth wall in theatre, my friends, nor in life. That's not how it works, baby. Yes, please sit down. I've one last book to finish, yes, and you know it's going to be a real doozy. And I'm working to a very strict celestial deadline, but then aren't we all? Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi.
Not that time exists, of course, but ironically we don't have the time to talk about that. Perhaps some other time, if we've time. Tonight of all nights, everything is up for grabs. Now, here we all are. Yes, I know it's a bit crazy for sure. But sometimes we need to go out of our minds in order to come to our senses. Hello.
Hello.
How are you all? All right? My name is Jeremy Stockwell. And, well, I just did that. I thought I'd have a go at sharing this play I'm making with a dear friend Terry about Alan Watts. So I thought I'd share a little bit of that with you. And so begins. Hello.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
That's all right. Thank you all for coming here tonight to celebrate the great man, Alan Watts. It's an auspicious occasion, I feel, because this is the 50th anniversary of the very night Alan Watts died. And to celebrate Watts in words and in music, Please welcome in no particular order, and they're seated amongst you somewhere, are our wonderful dear friends who will be speaking what's words or singing some songs. They are Kate Alderton, who's right over here. You can round of applause if you want to do that. Rachel Oyawle, have I got that right? Yeah. Right at the back there, trying to keep conspicuous, not on your Nelly, is Tim Arnold, right here. There he is. And hiding in a cupboard someplace at the back is the wonderful Robert Bathurst. Bathurst, beg your pardon, Robert Bathurst. So, before I take you on a brief trip through Alan's life, I thought to start with a song. Written in 1948, this is you, honey. You weren't written in 1948, but by Eden Abes, which somehow seems to fit, I think, the nature of Alan Watts, the man. This is Nature Boy. Please give it up. What does that mean, give it up? I say give it up sometimes, I don't know what it means. But please, a round of applause, we might put it that way, for Rachel Oyawle. I haven't given anything up. Oh, I'm sorry, my dear.
Was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy. They say he wandered very far, over land and sea. A little shy and sad of eye, but very wise was he. And then one day, magic day, he passed my way, and though we spoke of many things, fools and kings, this he said to me: the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love, and be loved in return.
Rachel later she'll be reading a piece of Alan Watts's work. Okay, Alan Watts was born in Chislehurst in Kent in 1915, and although he was raised as a Christian, he developed an immediate interest in Oriental and Asian arts due to his mother, who collected tankards and writings and paintings from the ancient East. And such was his interest in Buddhism. He wrote, as a young man, several papers, which he then sent off to the Buddhist Lodge in London. And they invited him along to speak on the subject of Buddhism. Well, what they weren't expecting is what they got. A 16-year-old schoolboy in a uniform saying, "Hi, here, I want to tell you all about Buddhism." So they were very surprised when he turned up at the door. Actually, it turned out all right, because in due course they elected Alan as secretary of the Buddhist Lodge, still at 16. This was in 1930. He left school at the age of 17, really at a bit of a loss as to know what to do. Well, now I'm going to hand you over to my learned friend Robert here, who'll take up the story from that point, himself reading from Watts' biography entitled In My Own Way, a wonderful double entendre. Please welcome Robert Bathurst, ladies and gentlemen.
No literate, inquisitive and imaginative person needs to go to college, unless in need of a union card or a degree as a certified physician, lawyer or teacher. In 1932, at the age of 17, 18, my father could not afford to send me to Oxford without a scholarship, and I did not really want to go there. But he did something much better. He gave me a job in his office until I could find my feet. Otherwise, we went for walks at weekends through the hills of Kent, during which we discussed all the basic problems of life, admired haystacks, views of the Weald, and ancient churches and mansions. We drank beer and ate excellent bread and cheese, the tart and solid cheddar and sometimes blue Cheshire, at village pubs. Almost invariably, he accompanied me to sessions at the Buddhist Lodge and soon became the institution's treasurer. He is a serene, quiet man who never says anything unless it's really worth saying, and I cannot imagine a more companionable father. Thus, with my father's unfailing support and encouragement, I designed my own higher education. I chose Toby Humphreys, chairman of the Buddhist Lodge, as my main preceptor, and he in turn introduced me to Nigel Watkins and his aged father, John. Nigel runs the most magical bookshop in the world and is the most unobtrusively enlightened person I have ever known. The shop is on a secluded place named Cecil Court at the south end of Charing Cross Road, close to the National Gallery and the Colosseum. He sells books on Oriental philosophy, magic, astrology, masonry, meditation, Christian mysticism, alchemy, herbal medicine, and every occult and far-out subject under the sun. But he himself has, if he will take his own advice, perfect discrimination in what one should read. His father, John M. Watkins, was almost blind when I knew him, but he advised me carefully as to what I should read of the principal texts of Hindu philosophy. Nigel not only became my bibliographer on Buddhism, comparative religion and mysticism, but also my most trusted advisor on gurus, pandits and psychotherapists, then flourishing in London. And his shop remains one of the world's most important centres of what I must call metaphysical gossip. Imagine the bookish counterpart of a warehouse which deals in Chinese ink and jade, Indian incense, Turkish tobacco, Lebanese hashish, Tibetan jewellery, Persian carpets, Japanese implements for the tea ceremony, Buddhist gongs and rosaries, and an international centre for information about what is going on in the whole occult subculture all over the world. Managed by a modest fellow who knows exactly where it's at. In the Watkins Bookshop, one would expect at any moment to come across a Mahatma or a High Lama visiting England on a secret mission to feel out potential initiates for the Great White Lodge, and who might arrange for you to be whisked off into an unknown sanctuary in Bhutan. And instead of giving lectures, Nigel simply tells you what to read. Whenever we go to London, he takes us to lunch at a most cheerful pub just round the corner, stuffs us with veal and ham pie, and drowns us in beer. And I now hand you back to our ringmaster, Jeremy Stockwell.
Well, there we are. Thank you very much indeed, Robert. You'll be hearing from him later. Yeah, here we are, sitting in that very place which I'm sure, which I'm sure hasn't changed much since Alan's day here. In 1938, at the age of 23, the newly married Watts emigrated to America and started a family, and would you believe, trained to become an Episcopalian, am I saying that right? Episcopalian priest. Got to be careful how I say that. Having become a groovy vicar then at Northwestern University, California, he said that the scriptures became structures and the structures became strictures, and so he quit. He quit the priesthood and became a proud autodidact, writer, broadcaster, and freelance philosopher. He said he was living on his wits, and some wag said, well, no wonder you're always broke, living on his wits. Well, there we are. So there we are, espousing not so much formal religion and belief, but instead he talked about faith. He said belief is holding on. Leaf means to wish, doesn't it? Belief, be wish. So belief, it's not so much about belief, he said, but in letting go, and that is faith, and that is trust. Learning to trust. Alan wrote many books on Christianity and Buddhism and Tao early on, and clearly viewed these philosophies in his own idiosyncratic way. His written work sparkles with great wit and wisdom, as I'm sure you're all aware. And one thing all his books seem to have in common is that really it's all about love. Faith, trust, letting go, and not taking life too seriously. Now, please welcome our dear friend here, Kate Alderton, reading an extract from Watt's 1960s essay, aptly titled The Spectrum of Love. Kate Alderton, ladies and gentlemen.
We know that from time to time there arise among human beings people who seem to exude love as naturally as the sun gives out heat. These people, usually of enormous creative power, are the envy of us all, and by and large, humans' religions are attempts to cultivate that same power in ordinary people. Unfortunately, they often go about this task as one would attempt to make the tail wag the dog. For there is no way to imitate loving being. There is no way of getting it. And yet it is absolutely essential that we have it. Obviously, the human race is not going to flourish harmoniously unless we are able to love each other. The question then becomes, how do you get it? Is it something that you simply have to contract, like measles? Or, as theologians say, is it a gift of divine grace, which somehow is dished out to some but not to others? Love is not a rare commodity. Everybody has it. Existence is love. Everybody has the force running. Love is operating here. But of course, people tend to distinguish between the various different kinds of love. There are good kinds, such as divine charity, and then there are allegedly bad kinds, such as carnal lust. But they are all forms of the same thing. They relate in much the same way as the colours of the spectrum produced by the passing of light through prism. We might say that the red end of the spectrum of love is Dr. Freud's libido, and the violet end of the spectrum of love is agape, or divine love, or divine charity. In the middle, the various yellows, blues and greens are as friendship, human endearment, consideration. Now it's said that selfish people love themselves. And I would say that belies a misunderstanding of the whole thing of yourself. It's really something that's impossible to love. One obvious reason for this is one's self, when you try to focus on it, or to love it, or to know it, is oddly elusive. Let me illustrate why. Once, there was a fish who lived in a great ocean. And because the water was transparent and always conveniently got out of the way of his nose when he moved along, he didn't know that he was in the ocean. Well, one day the fish did a very dangerous thing. He began to think. Surely I am a most remarkable being, since I can move around like this in the middle of empty space. And then the fish became confused because of thinking about moving and swimming, and suddenly had an anxiety paroxysm and thought he had forgotten how. At that moment, he looked down, saw the yawning chasm of ocean depths, and he was terrified that he would drop. And then he thought, if I could just catch hold of my tail in my mouth, I could hold myself up. And so he curled himself up and snapped at his tail. Unfortunately, his spine wasn't quite supple enough, and so he missed. And then he went on, trying to catch hold of his tail, the yawning black abyss below becoming ever more terrifying, and he was brought to the edge of a total nervous breakdown. The fish was about to give up, when the ocean, who'd been watching with mixed feelings of pity and amusement, said, "What are you doing?" "Oh," said the fish, "I'm terrified of falling down into the great deep dark abyss, and I'm trying to catch hold of my tail in my own mouth to hold myself up." So the ocean said, "Well, you've been trying that for a long time now, and you still haven't fallen down. How come?" "Well, of course I haven't fallen down," said the fish, "because I'm swimming." "Well," came the reply, "I am the great ocean in which you live and move and are able to be a fish. And I have given all of myself to you in which to swim. I support you all the time you swim. But instead of exploring the length, the breadth, the depth and the height of my expanse, you are wasting your time pursuing your own end." And from then on, the fish put his end behind him, where it belonged, and set out to explore the ocean. There is not, as it were, just nice love, nasty love, spiritual love, material love, mature affection, infatuation. There are all forms, and they are all forms of the same energy. You have to let it grow where you find it. And when you find just one of these forms existing, if at least you will water it, the rest will blossom as well. The essential point is to consider love as a spectrum.
Well, there we are. Kate Alderton. With his popular TV and radio shows on religious and spiritual and mystical matters, and his wide-ranging and wide-published writings, it wasn't long before Alan found himself at the forefront of the peace and love flower power movement. In fact, he was there right from the start. In fact, one might say he was one of the people who actually started all that. His talks and lectures and tours only served to bolster his popularity throughout the 1960s, early 70s. His work was never preachy. His ideas were only really by playful suggestion and investigation. And he became, by his own admission, a philosophical entertainer. What a lovely title. When fans often turned up at his houseboat in the Vallejo, down in Sausalito, it's still there and you can go visit. I don't know whether you're allowed on board. He moved into a high-up cabin in an arty community called Druid Heights, which actually is still there with very few, some, but very few of the residents still there. It's a very beautiful place. He wrote a book there in 1971 called Cloud Hidden, Whereabouts Unknown, a mountain journal, wherein he began to mourn the loss of the hippies, and he began to mourn the loss of the peace and love, flower power age. And so, here's our friend Rachel again with an extract from his essay from that very same book, Consider the Ladies. Ladies and gentlemen, Rachel. Thank you.
Whatever happened to the hippies? During the late 60s, one had the impression that the ordinarily drab scene of the American life was about to blossom into an easygoing, colourful exuberance. Men seemed sure enough of their masculinity to abandon their customarily uptight machismo styles of dress and bearing, to let their hair down, to sing and wear jewellery, and to dress with elegance. It seemed that a positive lifestyle was being proposed as a less hectic and less expensive alternative to suburbia's conspicuous consumption of uniformly slick plastic hardware. The various forms of rock music showed possibilities of a legitimate development of the Western tradition, which had come to a halt in the silences of John Cage and the electronic howls of musique concrète. Artistic glory seemed to be returning to Western art through the psychedelic painters. There were even prospects of a truly swinging religion, with meditation, chanting, and joyous rituals, unrecognized and set free from the unproductive guilt hang-ups of the Judeo-Christian conscience. But now, 1971, judging from Sausalito, California, as one of the hearts of the movement, the hippies and flower children have turned back into something even scruffier than the beatniks. The long hair is tangled and snarled, and the blue denim's patched and frayed. The beads and jewellery have been pawned, and the kapok is coming out of the pads. The attitude is silent, even surly, and the music has become just turned-up noise. Hardly anyone now dances at the Fillmore, they just sit. The rich verve of the San Francisco Oracle has disappeared from the ever more paranoid, violent, and funky underground press. Love has just become fornication. But who needs it when personal style is contrived ugliness, and people manage to look like drab peasants from some depressed area of Russia? This sagging of spirits may reflect simple depression at the endless and sickening war, at the realization that it may be too late to do anything about ecological catastrophe, and at the difficulty of finding employment even in the sterile, busy work of government and corporations. More and more, however, the professed philosophy is ecological concern, and there has indeed been an appreciable migration of hippies from the streets to the countryside in an attempt to love and cultivate the earth at first hand. If the earth is the human's extended body, to be loved and respected as one's own body, those who do no greening of themselves will hardly bring about the greening of America, Britain, and the Western world. The idea of greening involves colour, flowering, freshness, and, above all, respect for what is organic and vegetative as distinct from the mechanical and metallic. The straight lines of thought, measurement, money, politics, education, and business are imposed upon what is the reality of the wiggly, lilting, curvaceous forms of nature, in order to get it all straightened out, squared away, cleaned up, and controlled. I would wish, therefore, that hippies would once again consider the lilies, for the very reason that they are frail and frivolous, gentle and inconsequential, and thus have those very qualities of vegetative wisdom, so despised by those who have wills of iron and nerves of steel, to fight the good fight and run the straight race. As Lao Tzu put it 2,000 years ago, humans at their birth are supple and tender, but in death they are rigid and hard. Plants when young are sinuous and moist, but when old are brittle and dry. Thus, suppleness and tenderness are signs of life, while rigidity and hardness are signs of death. For I feel that we would go better with this wiggly world if we thought in terms of roots and branches, vines and creepers, fronds and fibre, rather than in sterile angularities of metal and quartz, in which the genius of life has not yet arisen, and in which energy may stutter and hum, but has not yet learned to feel. At least then, let me hope, dear children, that there are seeds in your dirty fingernails, and that you will again come out with flowers.
Oyawle, ladies and gentlemen. There we are. It strikes me he's always so relevant. He's never been out of print. These books are available here, certainly loads upstairs, but you can buy them anywhere, and they're never out of print. Hello. Well, ha-ha, look who's arrived.
You started a bit early.
Well, we started at 5, darling, but we can do it all again. I sat down here. I went like, I put this over, I went like, no, I won't do it again. So here we are. So Watts wrote about all sorts of things and recorded video, audio, and from Christianity to Buddhism to Tao to Vedanta. And he wrote about all sorts of subjects, from sliced bread to how you dress, to your shoes, to ecology, we just heard there with Rachel. And he was, his views are still so relevant, I think, and so important. With 7 children that we know of, with 7 children and 3 wives and quite a lot of people to support, he kept on working. And he undertook, towards the end of his life, quite an exhaustive lecture tour of Europe. And he went back to England and saw his father and had a good old time. And what with his drinking and his smoking, his family and friends seemed to become a little bit concerned about his health. And well, his view on death and dying remain as intriguing and as relevant as ever. So here's Kate to share some of those thoughts with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Kate Alderton.
Whoever knows that he knows must be amazed. This is both to wonder and to be lost in a maze. To wonder, because knowing and being is downright weird. And to be lost in a maze, because knowing that one knows generates a confusion of echoes in which the original sound is lost. For when I know that I know, which one is I? The first which knows? Or the second which knows that I know? Or the third which knows that I know that I know? On the one hand, to know about knowing is to think, to have a mind, a formula of words and symbols which stand for the very act of knowing. On the other hand, it is to turn the senses back upon themselves and try to become physically aware of the very organs of being aware. Infants do this from the beginning. They probe, they suck, manipulate the accessible parts of their own bodies. They poke their fingers into their ears. They try touching their eyeballs. They whirl themselves about so they feel dizzy. The only trouble is that the body is not completely accessible to itself, and the senses are not fully transparent to themselves. True, I can explore someone else's body much more fully than I can explore my own, but that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. I wanted to feel it all from the inside rather than the outside. Because the senses then are not fully transparent to themselves. The very act of knowing, and isn't this really what I call I, seems to be without any intangible foundation. It springs from the void. It stands alone, a light illuminating the world, but not illuminating the wires that connect it with the world, since they lie immediately behind it. I am, therefore, to myself a stranger in the earth, facing and meeting the world, but not really belonging. Herein, quite simply, is the origin of humans' poignant sense of individuality, of being uniquely alone and of having an existence which is mysteriously lost and problematic. They are kicked out of the Garden of Paradise because paradise is having connection, roots in the garden, stem from the branch, current from the light. To be aware of that connection is to have one's heart in the wrong place, far out in the fruit, instead of within in the tree. It is to feel that one's basic self is isolated within the body's envelope of skin, forgetting that the self is the whole circulating current from which embodiments come and go, season after season, endless variations on a theme. 100 gourds from the mind of one vine. Nevertheless, this sensation of being lost and alone is not actually something against nature. It is a dare. It's an adventure, a new game of getting lost, as children like sometimes to be shut up in the dark. To play it, being individual, being alone and afraid to die, is a strangely fruitful game. Hence, all the wonders, all the mysteries, the myth, the religion, philosophy, science, techniques. Hence the whole world and terrible fantasy of human civilization. Hence the marvellous bitter sweetness of loving another person. Your eye inside your skin and I inside mine are pockets of the same current, but not knowing it save the obscure form of loving you without being able to say why. I never die at all. I only get lost every time I am born, because I then come to feel that I'm rolling around out there all unconnected. And when I feel out there, I am as unconscious of my connection, of my being, in fact the whole current, as I am unconscious of the brain formations which underlie consciousness. The question to be explored then is, how far out can I get? How lost without being utterly lost? It is thus that when we are children, we test the limits of reality. We try to get as much we can get away with, see how far we can provoke authority without calling down the wrath, how deeply we can get involved in all sorts of games of skill without losing track. The question for the human is, how personal can I become without losing track? How sensitive, how sympathetic, how respectful of human life, or for that matter animal life? How far does my very claim to humanity depend on my protecting my own rights against those of the collective? The importance of this question lies in the fact that Western cultures have bred the type of human being who feels strongly alienated from everything which is not their own consciousness.
There we are. Thank you, Kate. Well, there we go. Returning from an exhaustive British and European tour, Alan Watts died in his sleep at the Mandala Mountain Hut in Druid Heights in the early hours of November 16th, 1973. He was only 58. For some, there is a little speculation about his death, whether it had been planned or whether he was cremated before the authorities could attend to it, or some monks supposedly came and disposed of him. But I don't know if that's true. My feeling is, like all of us, he just died. Here's a piece that he wrote towards the end of his life, which I think to some degree really encapsulates what he was about. This is from his book, The Nature of Consciousness, read for us here by Robert Bathurst. Robert Bathurst, ladies and gentlemen.
If you awaken from this illusion and you understand that black implies white, self implies other, life implies death, or shall I say death implies life, you can feel yourself not as a stranger in the world, not as something here on probation, not as something that has arrived here by fluke, but you can begin to feel your own existence as absolutely fundamental. I'm not trying to sell on you this idea in the sense of converting you to it. I want you to play with it. I want you to think of its possibilities. I'm not trying to prove it. I'm just putting it forward as a possibility of life to think about. So then, let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. And that you could, for example, have the power within one night to dream 75 years of time, or any length of time you wanted to have. And you would, naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure during your sleep. And after several nights of 75 years of total pleasure each, you would say, well, that was pretty great. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream which isn't under control, where something is going to happen to me that I don't know what it's going to be. And you would dig that, and you would come out of that, and you would say, wow, that was a close shave, wasn't it? Then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now. You would dream the dream of living the life that you are actually living today. That would be within the infinite multiplicity of choices you would have, of playing that you weren't God, because the whole nature of the Godhead, according to this idea, is to play that he is not. So in this idea then, everybody is fundamentally the ultimate reality. Not God in a politically kingly sense, but God in the sense of being the self, the deep down basic whatever there is. And you are all that. Only you are pretending that you are not.
Well, there we are. We're coming towards the end of our little celebration here tonight. To conclude, to conclude our celebration of Alan Watts, please welcome our dear friend here, Tim Arnold. Hello, hello.
Thank you. I want to say something very quickly about this song before I play it. I've not played it before live, and it has an interesting Wattsian history. Jeremy is kind of my guru into Alan Watts. He introduced me to Alan Watts, and he introduced me to my partner Kate, who you've seen speaking beautifully here tonight. Jeremy gave me a phone call, I think at 6 o'clock in the morning in 2019, saying, I can't make it to the airport to take Alan's daughters. Could you take them for me? Alan Watts' daughters. And I was kind of thinking, this is not real. And I thought, no, it is real. He's Buddhist, so am I. This is a good thing to do, Tim, and I'm asking you. And so I did. I took Joan to the airport, and on the way back wrote the chorus of the song I'm about to play. 2 years later, I'm listening to Alan Watts talking about the spectrum of love, and I wrote the rest of the song. So it's been a long time coming. I think it's extraordinary to be able to play it here for the first time of all places, in front of you fine people. So thank you, Jeremy. Everyone put their house together for Jeremy Stockwell, for shining the light really on this work for many more generations to come. This is called The Spectrum of Love, and I am reading the words because I've never played it before. This is from my album Maybe Magic. Don't tie it up, let it out, don't self-destruct. Let's get the cat out of the bag. The cat has wings, the cat can fly and it sings. No background, no figure animism, no environment, no organism. From front to back, other goes with self. Everyone is you, you are everybody else. It's the love you give me. I'm lost the limit to the love I can. Exude it like the sun makes heat. Don't let the tail wag the dog. The inner fountain, the heart's beat, become the mountain to never ever ever stop. So trace the spiral in your hand, the upward spiral to help you land. Be like a river, buzzing like a bee, in and out of this energy. It's the love you give me. I'm lost to the limit to love I can give you. It's the love you give me. I'm lost to the limit to the love I can give you. It's the love
them, they can find that song on
Maybe Magic.
Maybe Magic. There we are. Maybe it has been magic. I don't know about you, but it's
Available on
magical.
all unmagical streaming services.
Quite right. So thank you very much, Kate Alderton, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Oyawle. Tim Arnold.
And Jeremy Stockwell.
Oh, yeah, me as well. Robert Bathurst, ladies and gentlemen. We can do Jeremy Stockwell again, if you like. I'd also like to thank Watkins Bookshop for putting on this wonderful event. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to work with you. And thank you, Alan. There we are. Happy Death Day! Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Well done. Thank you. Go and buy some books. There's a whole bunch of this stuff up there. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, darling.